So thank you for choosing to be with us today, whether you're out in Zoom land or physically in this space. We're grateful that you decided to join us. So today, this is October, and as I said last week, people stay away because it's the money month. So thank you for showing up. We are going to continue our walk through Karen Russo's Money Keys on Sunday right now, and also in the classes that are going on. And it's really good because it's not just money. It's our relationship with our world and how it shows up in all the different ways that it does. And I have to tell you that I looked at the syllabus that Reverend Karen gave us, and she's got a whole lot of stuff in this week. And so I'm going to have to pick and choose what to use in tomorrow night's class, and I already know that Pat is going to slow it down so she can take it and step through it in pieces. I don't know what I'll do tomorrow. We'll find out. So we'll just see, right? So the topics in this week's collection are spirituality, beliefs, and habits, which is to say, everything. And so how do we puzzle out, how do we dissect out this stuff to decide what we want to focus on? Because we all know that you pick one thing and you work on it. Because if you try to do more than one thing, you're not going to do any of it well. So how do we pick one thing to focus on at a time? I think I know what I'm doing tomorrow now all of a sudden, so there it is. Yay. So today's talk title is As We Believe. Really? It asks a question. And the question is ugly, honestly, because it's, do any of us actually live as we truly want to believe? I don't like this answer any more than you do, because I know that I don't necessarily live the way I want to believe either. And if you're wondering what I'm talking about, I think you'll understand by the time I get through with this. The great news is we are always free to change our minds, and changing our minds changes our actions. And so we can always make that 2% turn in what we do and how we think and how we engage with the world, which creates a different reality for us. And that's our job, to decide how we want to be in the world, how we want to see everything, how we want to engage, how we want to participate, and show up that way. That is it. Everything else is gravy. So, with that as sort of a background, I want to start with the text from yesterday morning's daily morning practice. I read the daily reading from the Science of Mind magazine this month. It was really good. And the quote was from Dr. Holmes from the Science of Mind, page 187. This will be familiar to some of you. Never limit your view of life by any past experience. The possibility of life is inherent within the capacity to imagine what life is, backed by the power to produce this image, also known as divine imagination. It is not a question of failing or succeeding. It is simply a question of sticking to an idea until it becomes a tangible reality. Here's the kicker. The illusion is the way we look at things. We have looked at poverty, degradation, and misery until they have assumed gigantic proportions. Now we must look at harmony, happiness, plenty, prosperity, peace, and right action until they appear. So the way the magazine is set up, usually there's a quote, and then the person who writes the monthly magazine gives a reading of some sort. This month it's by Reverend Jesse Jennings, who has a center in Spring, Texas. He's a cool guy. He's a better writer than, oops, didn't say that out loud. Failure and success are value judgments. Life is a journey. While we may not entirely be where we prefer to be, we are closer than ever before. Here is where sticking to an idea comes in. Grim determination isn't the best way to proceed, but perseverance can be. And the next sentence was the gold nugget for a whole lot of people that were in the call yesterday morning. When an idea repeatedly presents itself, one that harms no one and potentially benefits all, this is not a random occurrence, but a sign from our deepest field of choice that we have what it takes, or will grow into what it takes to build out that idea in lasting form. So we may not have that capacity in us, but it originates from our deepest field of choice. It lives in us and it wants to be expressed. It's not something out there. It's in each one of us, and it blossoms if we let it, if we're willing to let it, if we're willing to do the work, if we're willing to make those choices, to let that blossom. So how do we do that? And how do we know what we actually truly believe? I told you I didn't like this part. We look at how we live. We look at what we say yes to. We look at what we do. We look at what we grumble about. We look at what we put up with and what we negate, disavow, or cancel out. I think I was at my first ministers' gathering back in 2015. And I was put in a small group. They do, the small group thing, we do that. And I was put in a small group with a couple of ministers that I didn't know, which was very cool. And one of them was this curmudgeonly kind of guy, kind of gruff. I have no idea what we were supposed to be talking about. But anyway, he impressed me because he was so clear. He was, curmudgeonly, kind of gruff and grumpy. But he was so clear and so straight in the way he talked about what it meant to be a leader, about what it meant to live and move in the direction of dreams. And I've run across him a couple times since then. And at the most recent online ministers gathering, because we've been online for 3 years now, somebody said he'd written a book. And it's called Blue Collar Spirituality, Finding a God That Works. His name is Michael McMorrow. He's spiritual director of the CSL in Granada Hills, which is just north of LA in California. Before he became an ordained minister, he was a carpenter. He built stuff. And in one place in his book, he wrote about how we know what we know about our spirituality, about our beliefs. And it shows up in what we do or what we don't do. And in his book, he writes about one time he was whining about how awful his life was, that he couldn't get the jobs that he wanted, that he just, it just wasn't working. And he didn't know what was wrong. And he just started. He was a brand new baby, new thought person. But he couldn't make sense of it because he was doing the spiritual work, but it wasn't translating into his life. So he went and talked to a practitioner, and he said, I don't know what's wrong because it's not working. And she said, ain't nothing wrong. Look at the struggle you're demonstrating with your words. You are demonstrating what you are saying. You are demonstrating what you are doing. You have a mighty consciousness for demonstrating exactly what you don't want. You need to shift your focus to good. And to know the reality of good is already yours. Well, he didn't like that answer. So he went to another one, went to a different practitioner, and he told the same sad story. And she said the same thing. Well, he didn't like that answer either, obviously. And she explained it then. She said, look, you say you're worthy of good, but you don't act like it. You need to start acting like it because your actions are canceling out your words. And so she challenged him. His complaint was he was getting little crappy handyman jobs, and he really wanted like construction jobs. And she challenged him. She said, you're telling the universe no. You're telling it you want yes, but you're saying no to everything it brings. Stop it. So the next job, whatever it is, no matter how dinky, say yes. And then do it as well as you possibly can. And the universe will finally hear your yes because you'll be congruent. And he reluctantly agreed. I don't want to do that. Okay, fine. So he wrote, within a week, I was working in a building doing handyman tasks that I had previously hated. Ironically, that job ended up leading me to the largest job and best year I had ever had contracting up till that point. Spirit had a plan that was within my own plan, and I had to make room for it. I must not only invite infinite power to play, but I must allow it to play. By means of my life, my business, my relationships, and especially my creative endeavors. Spirit says yes to what we truly believe. And when our life isn't working the way we want it to, we have a front row seat to seeing why not. And it probably comes as a surprise to us. So Friday, I was sitting at the computer, which we all do way too much, and I was reading an email from somebody, and I noticed, for me, that I was grumbling to myself about people in leadership not doing the right thing. They were taking on what looked like to me, they were taking unfair advantage of a situation. And if that thought of somebody in leadership taking unfair advantage of a situation causes your heart rate to go up and your blood to rise, you got good company. It's probably a belief you hold too. Notice that. So I decided to get curious and to see if I could see what was underneath that belief in somebody in power taking unfair advantage. And suddenly I had an awareness that went way, way, way back. Because I had a definition in my mind of what honorable meant. And I had evidence in my history that went contrary to that. Anybody have any familiarity with this? We get to look at our lives because that is our evidence of what we think. And the particular details of that story don't actually matter. But it's that awareness of what I see and what I have seen. And that disconnect that happens within me when I know that pieces don't fit, the puzzle doesn't go together, and Spirit gives me what I actually believe. This is kind of an aside, not really, but kind of. And there are 3 thoughts that I want to leave you with before I leave this aside. One is from Brené Brown, from the Atlas of the Heart book study that we did this summer. Stay in your own lane. Mind your own business. One is from Don Miguel Ruiz, 4 Agreements. Don't take anything personally, and don't make assumptions. And then from our beloved teacher, Maya Angelou, when you know better, you do better. Just because something has been true in the past doesn't mean it must be true now, and it must be true going forward. And we are always in that process. We can't not be if we're breathing. So, back to Karen Russo's material. So what's in the chapter about habits, what we do, what the actions are that we take? What are those things that we do routinely that show us what we believe? 1, if we're struggling in our lives in any way, some part of us believes that struggle is necessary. And, to quote Vitura Papke, there's not a word of truth in that. We've made it up, and we have the ability to choose differently. 2, the nature of life is flow and circulation. Energy, which is the fundamental concept of all creation, flows. You know this is true in the physical universe. We celebrate monsoons because we know the water cycle feeds the desert. And if it doesn't rain, the desert is in trouble. That's the state of flow. That's the state of circulation. And in our own bodies, we know that constipation and stagnation doesn't serve life. We know this because it's not a state of flow. 3, the law of circulation is based on the spiritual idea that we live in an abundant, creative universe of infinite energy that is always flowing. The nature of life is giving and receiving. All of life is circulation. What we give, we are. What we give, we experience. What we give, we receive. And there's always more of that which is infinite to give and to receive. So breathing is a good example of this circulation and the interconnectedness of life. As animals, we take in oxygen, which vitalizes us, and we exhale carbon dioxide, right? I mean, this is not like science. Well, it is science. But CO2 is a waste product to us. But it's critical for plant photosynthesis. Without us breathing, the plants are in trouble. Well, not entirely, because other things breathe. But it is an interconnection between human respiration or animal respiration and plant photosynthesis. It's just part of that continuity, that collaboration of life. And what's cool about what plants do is they take that waste product that we make and they turn it into biomass. They turn it into structure, which then moves all of life forward. 4, count them, 4, take inspired action. We know when we say, change your thinking, change your life. It's equally true that if you change what you do consistently and persistently, your thinking will change. Changing our behavior builds the willingness and the commitment within each one of us for long-term growth. This was the lesson Michael McMurrow learned when he quit saying no to spirit, to the universe, and started saying yes by taking those jobs and doing them willingly and competently. Psychologist William James describes this process as acting as if. Acting as if we have those habits already, then those habits will develop and will become something dependable within us. And then they become part of our experience, our life experience, and our thinking adapts to that new change. Number 5, bless every experience, every person, every bill, every friend, every difficult person, every situation in your life. Not in the Southern way of saying, bless your heart, which really means the opposite. But really, truly discover within yourself the ability, which is in all of us, to bless every experience for real. 6, serve. And this is a key part for me, not out of duty or obligation, or from the need to be recognized as good or useful, but serve because you receive as much as you give. If you're lonely, get involved. If you want a healthier world or a greener world or a safer world, find a group to belong to participate in. Contribute your time and energy to projects, businesses, and pursuits that inspire you and energize you and activate you. Share your time, energy, and talents with people and places where you experience the qualities of wholeness, freedom, and growth. Nothing special is required to serve, except an intentional willingness to do so. And then number 7, spiritual giving. Giving thanks for 100% of what comes in, and then gifting some percentage of that back out, whether it's 1%, 5%, 10%, whatever, to people or organizations that uplift you spiritually. Here's where I'm going to veer from the program, right? You get to choose. You get to choose what you support. Obviously, the center would love it if you supported it. And if your choice is to support some other organization that uplifts you spiritually, please do that. Because it is the heartfelt giver that uplifts the world. And we know this is true. It is up to you. And you get to decide what you value and how you choose to engage in all aspects of value in your life. That's the bottom line. So I'm going to close by repeating the spiritual thought and affirmation that I read earlier today from Ernest Holmes' Science of Mind, page 270 and 271. Believing that there is an infinite law of spirit or law of life which tends to multiply our gifts. Because in so doing, it multiplies its own experience, its own pleasure, its own fruition. We may assume the spiritual human is already a success and already supplied with everything they need. The potential of all things exists in universal wholeness. This potential exists in us already. We get to manifest it. We get to show up as God, as us. You don't have to. Nobody's making you. And yet we have that opportunity to do it. And then the affirmation, everything I need comes easily and effortlessly. And so it is. Think about how you choose to show up in the world. Think about how your habits, how your actions support your experience of being one with the all that is. Be congruent and continually make adjustments to get closer to that congruent self that is your heart's desire. Do that. Bless yourself and bless us all. Thank you. So now I'm going to speak the words of an affirmative prayer that I look forward to finding out what it is as the guys get back on the stage. So if I said anything that's useful to you to remember it, hold that in your mind while I speak these words. I celebrate this thing called life. I celebrate this opportunity to be one with the all that is. I celebrate this opportunity to be conscious of what I believe, and to recognize that I always have the opportunity to adjust and adapt my thinking, my feeling, my actions, to align with that greater good that I choose to experience. I know this truth for myself and for all of life. Every single being has this same opportunity, perpetually, constantly, continuously. And each one has the option of choice, that place where they get to decide how they wish to live. And I feel grateful to know this. I feel grateful for the experience, for the opportunity to express these words, for the opportunity to explore what I think, and to recognize there is a difference between how I wish to live and how I live now. And knowing I can move closer and closer and closer every day to my ideal of that divine presence as me. I celebrate this truth as a truth for all of life. All thinking beings have this same opportunity, the same ability to move in the direction of their dreams, to move in the direction of their choice. So I celebrate that. I celebrate this opportunity to love and be kind and to share joy and to share in this thing called life. Relaxing into these words, I let them be, and so it is.
So it is.